Is it just me, or is House of the Dragon a little boring? At its 4th-season peak, Game of Thrones, despite what the title might suggest, was never just about dragons, politics, intrigue, and complicated family relationships. Don't get me wrong, George R.R. Martin has always focused more on the conflicts between the 1% than the 99%. But he was also obsessed with ensuring these clashes were undercut by a level of humanity that made the world and its characters, despite all the strange cult and fantastical elements, feel real and multi-layered, just like the actual medieval world. Villains could be extremely charismatic and competent.
So the Lion does concern himself with the opinions.
No, that's not an opinion, it's a fact.
And an honourable, moral person.
When the king returns from his hunt, I'll tell him the truth. You must be gone by then. You and your children. I will not have their blood on my hands.
Misguided and foolish. And much like the real medieval world and the ancient world, humour and wit abounded.
Sometimes possession is an abstract concept.
You see, whether as a social glue, coping mechanism, or just pure entertainment, humour has always been a part of society. Much like Elon Musk on Twitter, you can't go 3 steps in a Roman ruin without finding a roast or a dick joke. And George R.R. Martin, as a historical enthusiast, made sure his novels would embrace this side of the past, and the Game of Thrones show, at least initially, followed his tune. Audiences were entertained by the many witticisms constantly flowing from iconic characters like Tyrion. But in the House of the Dragon, everyone's also post-traumatic. Any show of passion or humanity is presented as weakness, and most of the main characters' faces are stuck in a perpetually psychopathic stare, stressed, anxious, or, as with Daemon in this last season, popped up on psychedelics. And I don't know about you, but I feel like this takes away from what the show could be. On the surface level, it makes it less entertaining to watch overall. Now, I'm not saying House of the Dragon is bad or it's terrible to watch. At its best, it reaches incredibly high highs, with scenes that will forever remain etched into my mind because of how well their cinematography captured the very distinct atmosphere they were trying to create. But in season 2, we've seen more anxiety than artistry. This is your average scene. Now, in small doses or at key dramatic moments, scenes like this can bring a level of emotional depth to characters, but by overloading us with constant misery, it feels boring to watch at times, and also, counterintuitively, ruins the realism. It's clear that the somber tone was meant to communicate that this was a serious show for grown-ups, that won't shy away from the dark side of medieval life, like Game of Thrones. But as Game of Thrones knew, medieval life had many shades. It was neither unrelenting suffering nor complete joy. So focusing overwhelmingly on a serious tone at times makes House of the Dragon feel less like the subversion of the knights in shining armor fantasy that was Game of Thrones, and more of a caricature. Dragons, intrigue, and very little else. Like a performative form of Game of Thrones. Let's take the character of Daemon as an example. In the books, he was supposed to be a bit of an anti-hero, a rogue, not afraid to eschew morality, but also grounded by a degree of loyalty. Now, I'm not ever saying he was a bundle of laughs, but given how the showrunners have decided to present him in House of the Dragon, a dark, cutting sense of humour that, like Tyrion, could hide a fear of rejection and deep insecurities, would have humanized the villainy they attributed to Daemon in the show, or at least made him somewhat more compelling. But without this, all we're left with is a pretty clear-cut villain, an embittered and violent man who drifts between childish petulance and extreme immorality. Yes, he shows flickers of loyalty, like when he supported Rhaenyra's claim for the throne and picked up the crown for Viserys, but his sins far outweigh his brief moments of good, even by Westerosi standards. In the first season, he creates an unnecessary crisis by stealing a royal dragon egg just to get something against his brother, who he feels rejected him, and then nearly creates another crisis, this time a potentially existential one, by attempting to exploit his niece, at that time the king's only heir, for his own purposes. And this is without even mentioning what he did to his ex-wife, or the unspeakable acts he sanctioned in season 2, which I'm not going to spoil. And so we're left with a pretty clear cut and dry villain, without the charisma and sheer presence that would have made us secretly root for him. But the problems don't stop here. In fact, Daemon is one of the best characters. No, it's the supporting cast that really suffers from the sheer humorlessness of House of the Dragon. because the show can't focus as much on each individual character, the less important they are to the overall plot. And so often we're introduced to them and the people around them that they're supposed to have pre-established relationships with, often by inference or by others just telling us rather than showing us. And so humour or banter or some sort of chemistry between the individuals involved that are supposed to be married to each other or friends or enemies can really help flesh out these characters even without the added context. Because supporting characters don't have the time or attention placed upon them that would allow us to naturally understand the relationships between each character, we need other social cues to help us read between the lines. And humour is a great social glue.
How would you like to die, Tyrion, son of Tywin?
In my own bed, at the age of 80, with a belly full of wine and a girl's mouth around my cock?
Between couples, friends and family members, jokes and how comfortable one is to say them is often a clear sign of the depth of someone's relationship and helps us relate to these characters and their lives on a deeper level. The famous Podrick scene is a perfect example.
Oh, it was a gift, Podrick. This is more than I give you in a year.
He's a squire. You don't pay him.
Oh, then it's much more than I give you in a year.
I wouldn't take it, my lord. Maybe they're trying to curry some favour with the new master of coin.
Have you ever known a whore to turn down gold? They were happy enough to take it when I gave it to them.
What did you tell them?
I didn't tell them anything.
What did you do to them?
Lots of things.
And they seem to like these things?
Yes, my lord.
Of course they seem to like it. They're paid to seem to like it.
Only they weren't paid.
What are you saying? These ladies enjoyed him so much they gave him the time for free?
Is that what you're telling us? Sit down, Podrick. We're going to need details. Copious details.
At face value, it's just a kind of ridiculous, silly scene that fans love, just an example of the antics of Podrick and Bronn and Tyrion. But on a deeper level, it's a perfect example of the role humour can play to establish relationships between characters. Just by watching the scene, if you gave it to someone who'd never seen it, they'd be able to pick up who they are in relation to each other, what is their relationship like, without someone else having to tell us, these people are friends, or this is an employer, or this is that. We can pick up the power relations immediately. Whereas in House of the Dragon, far too often we're told these people care about each other, or they're friends, or they're married to each other, but we don't really know why. And so while I'm enjoying much of what House of the Dragon has to offer, I can't help but lament what could have been. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If not, no refunds on your